Welcome to Sleepover Cinema, where we analyze the TV shows that created the collective unconscious of those who couldn't help but wonder. I'm Hannah Leach, a writer, musician, audio producer, and the captain of Team Harry Goldblatt.
And I'm Audrey Leach, director, editor, producer, and non-miserable Brooklyn resident. We are the sister duo also known as Tubing Productions, and we haven't stopped thinking about these on-screen experiences since we first had them.
We're going to explore the good, the bad, and the nonsensical of the TV shows that first inspired our love for pop culture in an attempt to answer the question, are these shows actually good? And at the end of the day, do we really care if they are?
Today we are talking about HBO's Sex and the City.
Hello, everyone
Hi.
listening. I have an announcement to make. It is finally my turn to have an unemployed era, which I am so excited for. Sleepover Cinema will continue to thrive and flourish because I am a lucky duck. However, I'm not going to be making podcasts for other people for a while come July 1st. And I'm so excited to just have time to exist and not be super stressed. We're also moving to Chicago, confirmed. So both those things are happening at the same time. And that sounds like it would be stressful, perhaps. But to me, that's like very fun sounding. So it's happening.
Yeah, we're both gonna be moving at the same time. So who knows how that will affect.
Yes.
I don't know.
You might be getting some like iPhone voice memo episodes at some point. You just really don't know what's going to go down. But this will be an interesting season in terms of personal updates because all of this will happen during this season. So you will be along for the ride with us as we live life in a big and bold fashion.
More pressingly, this
Yes.
episode and the next episode are a two-parter. We're doing Sex and the City today, and we're doing HBO Girls next week, which is crazy.
Cannot wait. I'm not going to speak to my own personal investment in next week's show until we get there. But as someone who just watched the entire series of Sex and the City for the first time, I feel very primed for this discussion. And Audrey and I really haven't talked about it all that much, and I'm interested to hear
because
what
you'd
she
never
has
seen
to
it.
say. Speaking of that, question for the culture. Are you a Carrie, Samantha, Miranda, or Charlotte? Do you identify as multiple?
There's way too much chance to insult people by assigning that. It's like with girls.
I wouldn't be insulted by any of them.
People do the same thing with girls all the time. And I'm sure that will probably be the question for the culture next week. But
Yes.
like people being assigned Marnie and like going crazy. Like nobody wants these titles.
Here's the thing. If you don't take yourself super seriously, nothing is an insult in this context. You could give it to me and I would not be hurt.
If I had to choose one, it would be Miranda, but she's kind of insane. So
Yes. Well, none of them are particularly realistic.
no. Like you're never going to be like Samantha. You're definitely not going to be like Charlotte. So I guess it has to be Carrie of all of them. But
Well, was your impulse to say Samantha?
no. I just was kind of ruling them out in my head, like what's the most wrong and then the least wrong.
I'll accept a Carrie accusation. I'll accept an accusation of any of them because I appreciate them all in their own special way. Honestly, I appreciate Carrie the least, but that's fine. I'm okay with being problematic. It is what it is. We will get into.
Yeah, the rest they're just too specific in their neuroses, I guess. Or whatever's going on.
I guess with shows like this where it has like a little group or whatever, especially of women, I wonder why it is such a thing to try to like place yourself within the group. But I guess it kind of makes sense because the whole point is that you're supposed to feel like represented by one of them when you're watching shows like this to some extent. So, the facts. Sex and the City premiered on June 6th, 1998. So, a week ago, however many years ago that was.
25.
And it ended on February.
They just had their 25th anniversary.
She's a math whiz.
No,
Oh, right. Right. I saw that on the home screen. It ended on February 22nd, 2004. And let me just say, you can tell it's 2004 when you're watching the episode on Vibes alone. There were 6 seasons and 94 episodes, and the show was based on Candace Bushnell's column of the same name in the New York Observer, which was then compiled into a book. Carrie Bradshaw was Candace's alter ego that she would write about her own sexual experiences through, so that her parents wouldn't know they were reading about their daughter. Good strategy, Candace. The series was produced by HBO and created by Darren Star, best known for Sex and the City and, of course, the follow-up series And Just Like That, as well as Younger, Emily in Paris, 90210, and Melrose Place. And the series was produced by Michael Patrick King, who has produced all of the Sex and the City stuff, Two Broke Girls, AJ and the Queen, classic, and Will and Grace. He wrote nearly all of the Sex and the City premieres and finales and ended up taking charge of much of the later Sex and the City content. So this man was up in it.
Yeah, I think from what I can tell, he's the one who kind of made things bad a lot of the time.
Damn.
Well, he was in charge of the movies. Everyone hates the movies. That's universal. Yes. And I don't know. I think I kind of want to know about the relationship between Darren Star and Michael Patrick King. But, like, in today's day and age, it's Michael Patrick King who is doing the reboot, like, really heavily involved. So
men are running this. Men and SJP. It's just them running this at this point. The synopsis of Sex and the City from IMDb is as follows. 4 female New Yorkers gossip about their sex lives or lack thereof and find new ways to deal with being a woman in the late 1990s.
Simple enough. Okay, Common Sense Media. So they say that this show is good for 16 and up, which you would think they would be more conservative than that. Parents need to know that this show actually has lots of heart. So much so, in fact, that if not for the frank talk and walk about sex of all kinds, it would actually make a good primer on the enduring benefits of friendship, the power of love, and the importance of self-esteem. That said, nudity is a given in nearly every episode of the original HBO broadcast, available on DVD and on demand, as are very frank discussions on romance, lust, and love. The edited versions running in syndication have toned down the ladies' language as well as the nudity, which of course just leaves more to the imagination, which is why this review is rated okay for 15 and up. The uncut versions would warrant a 17 and up age recommendation. And then as far as like topics you can talk to your kids about, it says families can talk about why the quest for love is the main theme of the entire series, and not just romantic love either. What are the different types of love? And what role do friends have in one's life? Do they sometimes take the place of family? Why in the end does a woman need a relationship to be whole? That's a leading question.
Wait, no, but that's not what it said. It says, do they take the place of family? Why? In the end, does a woman need a relationship to be whole?
I did not write what everybody has been in because everyone is known for this show. They've all done a lot in their careers, but we have so much to get to. I was like, it's okay. Sarah Jessica Parker as Carrie, Kim Cattrall as Samantha, Kristen Davis as Charlotte, Cynthia Nixon as Miranda, Willie Garson, rest in peace, as Stanford Blatch, Chris Noth as Mr. Big, John Corbett as Aidan Shaw, and David Eigenberg as Steve. So much has happened with these people since the reboot. We'll talk about the reboot a little bit. Hannah has not seen it.
Yes.
But Willie Garson passed away. Chris Noth got canceled. And John Corbett is...
He did?
Yeah. He got some allegations, like sexual assault allegations, not from the cast, but from like someone else. John Corbett is coming back in the reboot season 2 as Aiden.
Mm-hmm.
And Steve, I just hate what they did to Steve in the reboot. Like, they made him like senile.
What?
They made him like
Why?
hard of hearing, and they needed to like make him so unappealing to Miranda that she would go cheat on him with a non-binary person.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay. That makes me want to watch it, honestly.
Oh, it's highly entertaining, but it's like sad also. What happens to Steve specifically.
Wow. He's such a cutie in this show too. I love him.
I know. As far as cultural context, I wanted to like figure out how this show came into existence, and how that happened was Candace Bushnell. She wrote this column, but she wrote books. She wrote for Vogue. She ended up writing for a lot more publications, and she profiled Darren Star for Vogue. And then they kind of became friends that way. And then Darren was like aware of her work and wanted to adapt her column into a TV show. Eventually she agreed, and Darren offered it to HBO and ended up going with HBO because he knew he could have a lot more creative freedom. And that's totally true. That checks out. However, after shooting the pilot, Sarah Jessica Parker didn't like it, and she wanted to be let go. And he was like, I'm not going to let you go, but I will hear you out and like make some changes so that she would be happy. Yeah. And there are some like definitely key differences between the pilot and the rest of season 1, but nothing too major. Like it's probably mostly like aesthetic, I would guess, that she wanted to change. She does have noticeably darker hair in the pilot. There's that.
Yes.
She does look kind of weird in the pilot, but I don't know if that's...
I think she looks cute. I like how she looks in the pilot.
No, she does look cute, but I can see it not being good for her. Like, I could see her not liking it. I don't know.
Yeah, I get
Just
that.
looking at how she looks in the rest of the show, it's like kind of a far cry.
Yes.
Okay, other like bits of cultural context that I could go on for days about cultural context, but we have to cover so much. We're doing kind of a lot of episodes, so I'm not going to do too much, but there is a very well-known and well-documented feud between Sarah Jessica Parker and Kim Cattrall, and it seems to have started, at least in the public sense, it started over payment differences. So I have like a quote from Kim. Kim says that salary discrepancies did indeed impact the show ending when it did. I felt after 6 years it was time for all of us to participate in the financial windfall of Sex and the City. When they didn't seem keen on that, I thought it was time to move on. And then, so ever since that news came out, there was always something with them. Like they would do interviews and people were just like not afraid to ask them about each other. And they would always speak on it, which is crazy. But they would try to like be nice. But all in all, Kim Cattrall basically would call SJP a mean girl and be like, they just like weren't nice.
I take to tasks the people from Sex and the City, and specifically Sarah Jessica Parker, is that I think she could have been nicer.
And then SJP plays victim, so you really don't know.
Was every day perfect? Were people always desperately, hopelessly in love with each other? No, but this is a family of people who needed each other, relied upon each other, and loved each other. And this sort of narrative, this ongoing catfight, it really, used to
Irk you.
really, not even irk, it really upset me. It was usually about like bad behavior on the set, and I take very seriously my reputation. Like I work really hard and I treat people well.
You really don't know.
Yeah. Well, especially like with the amount of power that she ended up having, and like I'm sure we'll get to this more later, but like how Samantha's plot lines just get like more and more humiliating over time. Like there's
Yeah.
no, what? Like, is it a coincidence? I don't know.
Also, just as footnotes, we're not going to talk about them again, but the two shitty movies, extremely panned, everybody hates them, and it's, if you haven't seen the second one especially, very Cheetah Girls One World energy, like distasteful
Yes.
tourism type of thing. It's like that.
Distasteful tourism is so
It's
funny.
like Eat, Pray, Love situation, kind of, except like
Yeah.
even worse. And then, yeah, so the reboot, I kind of just said these points, but in the reboot, they're just like obsessed with saying that they're old. And it's like, we get it, you're old. Like, stop saying it and just live your life, because people in their 50s and 60s don't just walk around every 5 minutes saying, oh, I'm old, I'm old, I'm old. Like, we get it.
Yeah.
Like they even have her getting like a hip replacement or like a knee replacement. It's just, everyone's having a stroke and dying. It's just a lot. But I still enjoyed it, then honestly, overall, because it was just like sort of a cringe watch, but there are elements of it that still feel true to the original. But that's a whole other
Yes.
conversation.
Wait, there's two other things in the notes that I want you to speak on.
What?
They put the only two gay guys together,
Oh, yeah.
like Stanford and Charlotte's gay.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really funny though, actually.
Well,
I kind of like that in a fucked up way.
it doesn't work at all because they are like known to hate each other, and like, or not,
Right.
they don't like each other, and they have not changed in all the time since the original show. So like they're like together, but they are bickering and they kind of hate each other. It doesn't work. And then sadly, Willie had to like not shoot anymore because he was so sick. So he's off the show after like the first 2 episodes maybe, and then it's only the other guy, and he gets like a bigger part. But they write him off by saying that Stanford left him.
Yikes. I guess they couldn't have like Mr. Big die and then Stanford die
No.
like in a row. That would be bananas if they did do it that way though.
Yeah, so not good.
Wow. Wait, so when Chris Noth dies on the show, was that just a coincidence that he got canceled right after?
I think it kind of was in the resurgence of his fame just by the show coming out that the allegations were surfaced. But yeah, it was really weird because remember how Peloton stock crashed, or not crashed, but like went way down after that show
Yeah.
premiered because he dies on a Peloton.
Yeah.
And so then Peloton hired him to be in a commercial, and they like did this all very quickly, and he was like in this ad for Peloton, and then like maybe a few days later it was like Chris Noth sexual assault allegations.
Oh my god. So Peloton just got like randomly dragged into the mud.
Yeah.
That is really unfortunate and also funny.
Yeah.
So, memories of the show. I just finished the show for the first time a couple weeks ago. I really enjoyed it. I loved ripping through it really fast because you can do that, especially as someone who walks around with their iPad constantly playing it, like around the house, like doing tasks. And I'm sure I will have more potent memories associated with it a couple years from now. But right now, it is my show of the present.
Yeah. Like none of our friends or anything nobody that I was friends with growing up ever talked about Sex in the City. Like, I don't know. I guess I don't know. Nobody, like, our mom didn't watch it. I guess she did watch it in like the 90s or something, but
what she told me is that she and dad would watch it together after we went to sleep.
yeah. Back then you just had so little choice of like what to watch. Like if there's like an It show to watch,
Yeah.
like everyone would just watch it. Like,
That's really true. That is really true. I also do remember two more things, actually. One of them is that I remember when we were kids, I would like hear the name of that show being thrown around and I'd be like, oh my God, it has sex in the title. Like, it has to be so crazy. I remember that. And then also I remember starting the series when I was a freshman at NYU and sitting on my twin bed doing a latch hooking rug watching Sex in the City. And I think I watched maybe like 6 or 7 episodes and then I abandoned it. So 10 years later, I have now watched the whole thing. And the plot has been completed in that sense, at least.
yeah, I also watched it, I think, as a freshman or sophomore in college. That's just what you do when you go to NYU. You got to cover your bases. Like,
Yes.
it's
I
so
was gonna
relevant.
say, as one does.
yeah.
Yeah. Because they're on NYU campus, like, or on University Place, like a decent amount in that show. So you do see it in the background.
Alec Baldwin's home.
Alec Baldwin stomping grounds. Absolutely. All right. So we're going to talk about the pilot. We're going to talk about season 2, episode 18, X and the City, which is the finale of season 2. We're going to talk about season 3, episode 18, Cock a Doodle Doo, which is also the finale of season 3. And then we're going to talk about season 4, episode 11, Shoulda, Coulda, Woulda. Then we're going to talk about season 6, episode 9, A Woman's Right to Shoes. And lastly, we're talking about the series finale, An American Girl in Paris, part 2. So
Yep.
write all that down and meet us back here.
Or just binge it all.
Yes, honestly, or do that. Both are good options.
Yeah. Welcome back. We're here to talk about Sex and the City. Many, many different moments in its history over time.
We're going to start with the pilot, titled Sex and the City. It aired on June 6th, 1998, and the synopsis of the episode is: sex columnist Carrie Bradshaw and her close friends navigate the complex world of dating in New York City.
Well, I really like the grungy style. I like their docu style they have going on. It's like fake man on the street interviews, blah, blah, blah. They slowly over time completely get rid of that element to the show.
Which is a loss.
Yeah, I think it's a loss. It's there probably in seasons 1 and 2. I don't know if it goes past that, but
I don't think so.
yeah, it kind of goes away fast, but I can totally see how in adaptation that kind of film method would come up, because the whole thing of the column is we need to hear from all these different people and we need a way to introduce these different topics of love in a way that makes sense. So I like that. And eventually they get so swept up in their own storylines that it no longer is, it's not about let's answer this question. Sometimes it'll just become let's go through the arc of whatever relationship they're in. But I did think it was kind of weird that Samantha wasn't in the opening interviews. Like, she's in the first scene with the 4 of them at the table, but she's not in the opening interviews.
At least when they did introduce her, they were like, she's a diva and an icon, and kind of like her statement, like whatever she says immediately is what brings up the topic of like having sex like a man. So she sort of introduces the main point of the episode. But yeah, agreed. It's weird that she isn't in those.
Yeah. I noticed also the Carrie apartment is different. That makes sense because it's pre the full show, so you got what you got. But it's weird to see her in a different room in general. Even in the pilot, and it makes sense because it's run by, like, this is a series created by a gay man, but like almost immediately you've got kind of like the minor abuse of the gay best friend going on. Like,
Yes.
I'm like, these poor, like, Darren Star must have been treated that way a lot or something.
I'm sure. I really love the tone of the pilot. I think it's a lot more strong than the other episodes. That you kind of said that from the very beginning, like the grunginess of it and like the dirtiness of it, I really like. Everything just feels way more authentic in the pilot than it does in the later episodes. And of course, you have your things that have like aged badly, like the immediate comparison of Big to Trump, classic 90s New York thing. And then like the whole like, why don't these guys, or the whole, why don't these girls just marry a fat guy? Why don't they just marry a big tub of lard? Like, here's my like ongoing statement for this show, and it will absolutely come back. It's like anything that is edgy humor for white people at any point in media is gonna age badly.
Yeah.
Because
there is no like original humor for white people.
Yeah, or it's just very like jokes at the expense of groups that at the time it was socially acceptable to discriminate against, like very, very plainly. And so, and everyone agrees about this, I'm pretty sure. Like, it's problematic, but of course it is. It's a great pilot. I love when Big drives away and is like, abso-fucking-lutely. And then we get the freeze frame of Carrie turning around.
Yeah.
It's delicious.
I've got one more thing with something that occurred to me in the pilot, but carries throughout the show, which is kind of like a conflicted feeling within the viewer about, especially I would think like female viewers for the most part, where, like, for example, in the pilot, there's the moment where Samantha goes back to the apartment with the guy that Charlotte was just with. Like, Charlotte's like, she doesn't want to sleep with him, so she leaves, and then he gets in her taxi with her so that he can go find someone else to hook up with. He brings Samantha back, and then Samantha is like, she's made it clear that she is fine with one night stands. It's not a problem. And he's like, okay, you can't sleep over. And she's like, okay, I also have to get up early, whatever. And then, but like, she's got this, they like linger on her for a second. And like, you can't really tell if she believes what she's saying or not. Like,
well, she definitely was lying about waking up early.
Yeah, like there's just a moment there where you're like, right there in the pilot of what she's saying and how she feels might be at odds, but you don't.
Yeah.
Not that she's like, I'm going to marry this guy. Nothing like that. But just how steadfast is she really in that belief? Or is she just, that's kind of what she tells herself. Therefore, those are her like boundaries for herself and rules for herself. So like that feeling of like discomfort happens all the time. I feel like for women watching this show, where they're just constantly bringing up those topics where everyone of the four has like a different opinion, or they like hold two at the same time. And so it's always making you think about what women have, like what they're saying, I feel like, and what they're feeling, and if they're different.
In the pilot, they're like, there's never been a time before this where women in New York have as much power and money as men do. And so we need to start having sex like men and blah, blah, blah. And it's very like, we don't need feminism anymore. Like, that's kind of the feeling. Like, we have beat the odds. But then it's very clearly at the same time, like, okay, but you're also like bending over backwards for like pretty middling male attention and approval.
Yeah.
So is it,
you didn't beat the system.
Yeah, or it's like, is feminism about just fully detaching from expectations, or is it about demanding respect?
Yeah.
This is the $1 million question.
Yeah, and each woman has a different, like Carrie, the four of them, they all have a different approach to that question, and they're all they're all valid approaches. We all have to deal with this system in one way or another. So it's not that anyone's wrong, but it's just this show is so much about the over analyzing and like the pathologizing of potential relationships, or like they all they do is like talk about what might happen, kind of, but they're also kind of stopping anything from happening because of the over pathologizing in a way.
Yeah, I mean, they're just getting in their own way nonstop.
Yeah,
like especially Carrie. Holy crap, like, but really bad.
So we can move on. What that moment was reminding me of is that moment at the end of White Lotus season 2 where Daphne finds out that Harper and what's-his-face hooked up. So like the hot wife finds out that she knows that her husband is not monogamous, but that's like a part of their deal. And so, like, as the viewer, you're sitting there and you're like, I don't know whether I should feel bad for her or not, because she's okay with it, we think. Like, we think that she doesn't see herself as, like, a victim of this relationship, so we shouldn't see her that way, but we kind of do. So, like, that, sometimes Samantha reminds me of that.
It's like any episode where she's allowed even like an inch of nuance, that is what comes out. It's not very often, but when it is there, that is what it is, I think.
Yeah. And that's kind of where they take it, but we'll talk about that.
Okay, next episode. Season 2, episode 18, X and the City. It aired on October 3rd, 1999, and this is the synopsis. 3 of the girls deal with loved ones from the past. For Carrie, it's trying to become just good friends again with Mr. Big, who now is with Natasha and even tells her they are already engaged. For Charlotte, it means the pony Tatty, which threw her off as a child, or a substitute horse. For Miranda, it's becoming friends again with Barman Steve, but then they get physical again. Samantha somehow finds, by chance, a new, huge, hunky man who seems about as cocky as she is and proves he has a cock of matching record size, which even she may not be able to handle. So it's like deep, 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 giant cock. That is the plot of this episode.
Well, that's like the sub. That's like the B plot.
It's like the D plot.
Yeah, there's still a lot of other things going on in this one.
So when we were picking the episodes, I was pulling for us to do this one just because the ending of it is like pretty iconic and also really weird. I think, like, she shows up to Natasha and Big's engagement party once it's over and like confronts Big in the street.
Hey, I have a question for you. Why wasn't it me?
Carrie.
No, seriously. I really need to hear you say it. Come on, be a friend.
I don't know. It just got so hard.
And like quotes the way we were at him and he doesn't get it. And then she walks away and looks at this horse and is like, I'm like that horse. I can't be broken. And it's just classic Carrie shit.
The highlight of this one to me is just the concept of like hating the new girlfriend and like how wrong that is.
Yes.
It's not fair, but so much of the show is Carrie hating Natasha for doing nothing wrong.
Yeah. I mean, she gives Big so much slack. She cuts him an unreal amount of slack.
Yeah. It's like, it is like the best friend's role to like kind of help shit on someone if your friend like needs you to. But it's not technically right.
When your girlfriend has a guy that you hate and that she one day goes clear and is like, sees all of the flaws in him that you've seen in him the whole time, and you talk shit with her, and then she's like, never mind.
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, I already said all of that, so now you just know that that's what I think. It is surprising that that doesn't really become a major issue to me in this show, but they are a bit older, so I think that that might be part of why it's not so life-ending for them.
And they do, I mean, that happens in the later episode. That happens with Miranda and Carrie.
Yeah, but then she takes it all back.
Well, it's not that she takes it back. It's just that they can both be true. Like, she doesn't say, no, I don't believe that. She's just like, I am not the genius of all things love. Like, if this is what you need to do to feel okay, then you need to do it and I'll be there for you. But like, she didn't take anything back.
You should be there for your friend when they go through a rough time. However, Carrie is like incapable of being there for a friend without instantly making it about herself. And Miranda is actually a good friend.
Yeah, Miranda's a good friend.
It's like, what I was going to say is like, well, Carrie's been there for her, so she's going to be there for Carrie. But like, has Carrie really been there for her?
I don't know. I think Carrie and Miranda are like the glue friendship. Charlotte and Samantha are not close. Like, they don't agree on like anything.
No, they're like not friends.
Yeah, they're like, which is really funny. It's like those type of friend groups totally exist, where it's like, we've been a friend group for like 20 years, but like, why? I don't know. If you put me
alone in a room with this person, I like wouldn't know what to say.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's just like one of those things, hanging out with the same people in the same group for a long time, you'll realize that like you are really only tight with like one or two of them, and if you were in a room alone with one of the other ones, you'd be screwed and be like, okay.
Yes, I have had that experience like many times. I know exactly what that feels like. I also want to just say, before we move on to the next episode, I love Steve in this episode. He's so cute. I just love him as a character in this show. It might be his little accent. He's also definitely like a sad puppy in this episode. Like, he's very like, come on, like, you left me in the street. He like shows up to her door and is so earnest about everything. Also, Cynthia Nixon goes really hard in that scene where she's like, I miss you. I want to tell you funny things when they come up. Like, I thought that she did a really good job in that scene.
One other thing about this show in general, never have, like, I would assume that cigarette sales actually skyrocketed because of this show. Like, she makes it look so good, you know what I mean? Like, what?
She does. She really does make it look so good.
Just refreshing, like...
Yeah, like spraying a little spritz of perfume on yourself. Like, that's what she makes it look like.
Yeah.
Tobacco kills, kids. Keep that in mind. Are we ready to keep it moving?
Yep.
This is the most problematic episode. Season 3, episode 18, Cock a Doodle Doo. Aired October 15th, 2000. Carrie and Samantha deal with noisy neighbors, and Miranda fears that the takeout lady laughs at her for ordering for one. The noisy neighbors in question for Carrie are literal chickens, roosters. And for Samantha, it is a gaggle of black trans women on the street. So one thing that I find really interesting about this, and this goes back to the original point that I was making with the first episode, which is like, edgy humor for white people never ages well. But at the same time, this show is like so beloved by so many people. There's this quote from Laverne Cox about this specific episode. And she was like, I love Sex and the City. I loved this show when it was coming out. And I was really sad when black trans women entered this world. And as she described it, were so thoroughly othered. But she found other ways and other reasons to love the show. So it's like even Laverne Cox, who is like the type of person that is being shat on in this episode was still a little bit like, this is bad, but the show is good, which I find really interesting.
Yeah. It also very much touches on class and gentrification, because the whole idea with this episode is that Samantha decided to buy a loft. Soho?
It's the meatpacking district.
Oh, okay, yeah, meatpacking district.
Yeah.
So back then it would have been right on that crest of gentrification. Now it looks like Disney World over there. At the time, that was kind of the situation. So it's like she's the basically first real gentrifier on the block, let's say. And then she's pissed off and like hate criming trans women on the street because she has that level of entitlement. And it's really fucking wild what she does.
By hate criming, it is verbal hate crime. It's dumping water. It's calling the cops.
It's enough things, though. It's not like it was just one instance. There's like 4 instances.
Right. I think the thing about it, too, is like how many white women's first real exposure to trans women or black trans women was through this show. That's concerning to think about also.
Yeah.
They use the T slur a lot. Like a lot.
At the end, when they're all having this like picnic on Samantha's rooftop as like an apology. So like you're supposed to feel better at the end, but it feels so bad. It feels awful.
Yeah.
Because first of all, Sarah Jessica Parker is like doing this accent that makes me want to hurl myself off a cliff.
Hey, you with the flower. What do you mean, you with the flower? You talking to me?
It all just feels so condescending. It's nothing about it is like a true apology or offer of friendship. None of that. It's more like a Band-Aid.
Yeah. Well, also, they sit up on the roof with the ladies and just make dick jokes the entire time.
Yeah.
Like,
if you ever want to, like, just feel the essence of, like, if you... straight white women group at the drag bar for the bachelorette party.
Yes.
It's that.
Yes. It is egregiously bad. Samantha looks like a true, like, cartoon villain. It's so bad. And I also just want to say that I think the only selfless thing I have ever seen Carrie do in this entire show is at the beginning, where she doesn't make the animal shelter lady put the roosters in the basement.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's it.
That whole plot line of Miranda ordering the same Chinese food from the same Chinese place every night. To the point where the lady on the other side of the phone, she knows the order. Like, she just knows Miranda's order and, like, calls her out on it. I have had that thought so many times about seamless drivers, like, delivery people. Like, what if they fucking clocked me? Like, what if, like, the same dude has dropped off? Because a lot of times they just drop it and leave, so, like, I don't, like, necessarily always see them. But I have had that thought, like, what if this person is like, why the fuck does this girl keep ordering this, like, one sandwich over and over again?
Yeah.
Like,
I'm sure that they're used to it, because I think a lot of people do that. People have their favorites, you know?
Yeah. But it's just something that I thought about many times, and it would be even more humiliating back then, because you really had to, like, own up to it with your voice and your face.
Yeah. There's places in Cleveland that I do a lot of, like, pickup ordering for, and I tend to get the same thing quite often. So I might be being observed and laughed at as well. But you know what? Sometimes that's what you got to do for your favorites. Okay, are we ready for the next one?
Yep.
Season 4, Episode 11, Shoulda, Coulda, Woulda, aired on August 5th, 2001, very close to 9/11. To her horror, Miranda is pregnant after one single night with Steve. After she told the girls, including her intention to abort, Charlotte walks out envious and disgusted. Carrie tells Aiden after making him swear not to tell, so he has to not tell his buddy Steve that he may lose his baby without even knowing. And then Carrie goes to see the waiter, Chad, the ignorant father of her aborted child from years ago. Charlotte gets a fertility test, which confirms her chances of pregnancy are only 15%. Meanwhile, Samantha longs for a Birkin, the ultimate status handbag, and abuses her star client, literal Lucy Liu's name, to jump the 5-year waiting list.
This show is not afraid to equate feminism with capitalism, or freedom with product in a lot of ways.
Which in the next episode, it's really just a reiteration of that.
Yeah.
The next episode we're going to talk about. But I wanted to talk about this episode because this kind of fits the bill of like the deep topic episode that we like to try to involve when we talk about these shows. And to me, this falls into the classic category of like abortion things on TV, which is like, it's okay to have an abortion. However, no one is going to have an abortion. Right. It's like no one's going to have an abortion on the show and then demonstrate that you fully survive and are fine after the fact. Like, except with, like, Samantha said she's had 2, Carrie said she's had 1, but they're always like, that was years ago. That was so long ago. And like, past Carrie or past Samantha are not characters that we know or care about. That's like people that don't exist in our eyes. And also Carrie like lying about having one for no reason, and then also telling Aiden about the pregnancy for no damn reason.
I mean, I don't see it as being for no reason, because it does bring up, like, that is a problem. Like, that maybe it's less of a problem now. Like, people are more willing to own it and talk about it because we need to. But back then, I could see women constantly lying about it or making it seem like it didn't happen. Of course, it's annoying when she does it because it just is.
It's still a thing. It's still a thing now.
Yeah, it's still a thing. So the
people
fact
still do the exact same thing.
That it's in the show is interesting.
I'm just saying it's a missed opportunity for an audience that very clearly has had abortions and survived. Like, I don't understand why they would stop short of actually depicting how it is. I mean, that being said, like, not everyone walks away from their abortion with the same feelings or like with the same experience. Like, some people regret it. Some people have it forced on them. Like, and there are levels to all of this. And to those who don't remember, I have had an abortion before. I talked about it on the Juno episode 5,000 years ago. So when I'm talking about this with some level of like gusto, that's why.
They were trying to have Samantha be that character, but then they didn't give her room to talk about it. So they kind of wanted to have their cake and eat it too. Like, they want, like, Samantha was technically the one in this episode who has had 2 abortions and doesn't think a second thought about it as far as we know, but they don't give her the room to like be that example or talk about it in a super in-depth way. Yeah. But yeah, technically,
and of course it's like the slutty one.
Yeah.
You don't have to be Samantha to have 2 abortions.
Yeah.
You know, like, that is not the profile. Just as Samantha is not the profile for anyone alive on Earth.
No.
So, but it also leads into the question of, like, I don't think we need to discuss this, but, like, does the sperm slinger need to know?
I feel like it really is up to the pregnant one to make that call.
Yeah.
Because
I agree.
And it's not, that is not because of any reason other than they're the only person that can know that information. Like, it's not, we would have to have some kind of system in place where it's like, it has to be reported. It would have to be like federally mandated. There is no other way.
That's like extremely not unthinkable in our current timeline.
As it stands, literally only the pregnant person can be that one to make the decision because they're the only person who knows other than the people they decide to tell. So, yeah.
Story-wise, I do enjoy watching Miranda's journey. Like, I think it's really interesting. I just wish that it could have happened in a different way.
Yeah.
I just wish that it didn't have to be a pregnancy PSA episode or an abortion PSA episode that then doesn't actually like see it all the way through.
But it does very well line up with the times.
Yeah.
Like, that is exactly what they would do. It makes so much sense that that's what they chose to do. And I do think it's interesting that Miranda would have a child. I think it's same. I just wish it wasn't that way necessarily.
Yeah.
For the reasons of representation, and that's all.
Yes. Same. Also, shout out to Lucy Liu being in this episode. All right, our next episode, season 6, episode 9, 69, if you wanted to be stupid. A Woman's Right to Shoes aired August 17th, 2003. Funny that that's a pun on abortion. Carrie has no luck at a baby shower. Stanford snatched the last good gift from the list, and host Kira makes everybody take off their shoes. Carrie's Manolos disappear, and Miranda insists she should be compensated. Kira offers to pay for them until she finds out they cost $485. She claims the shoes are an irresponsible waste and will only pay $200. While she grumbles singles don't get any gifts after graduation, Samantha learns even her bravado is helpless when it comes to children. Miranda meets and instantly falls for handsome new upstairs neighbor Dr. Robert Leeds. After Harry moves in, Charlotte obsesses about his habit of leaving dripping tea bags around the apartment. The next day, she learns he walks around stark naked in the morning. I don't even know what to make of the fact that, like, they front load Miranda watching this like really sexual drama with like a ginger woman and a black man where they just like have sex on TV a lot, and then kind of materialize this like proxy relationship for that. And I think he's the only real black character on the whole show that lasts more than an episode.
Yeah.
Because there's the whole episode where Samantha dates that black man and his sister is like, I don't want him dating a white woman. And that episode is also really problematic. I don't know what to make of the Dr. Leeds relationship.
They're like cute in theory,
it's noteworthy, though. Yes.
Like they definitely
it's
are
just
a
like,
cute
is
couple.
Is it fetishy? Is it not? I don't know, but I have questions. That's basically all I have to say about that.
It could work in both directions. Also, like it's not only Miranda who could be guilty of that since they're like watching it together.
But it's like kind of the embarrassment of it is that she's been watching this show and it looks weirdly like them, and then she has to like embarrass herself by revealing that that is the show she's been watching. There's also that joke where he's like interviewing to move into the building and everyone is finding a reason to say no. And she's like, we all know what's not being acknowledged here. And then the voiceover is, he was cute and Miranda was horny. I was like,
meaning that Miranda just used the, not used racism, but kind of used the threat of racism as a way to get her way so that he could move into the building.
Which is like kind of fierce.
Yeah, it kind of is. Actually.
But like,
I mean, it's like, because it's like
that's the lawyer.
There's no harm being done there, but like kind of a weird move.
Yeah. Well, she's like, it seems like you guys are racist. And then they're like, no.
That's also interesting because what they do with Miranda in the reboot is like so painful in terms of they kind of make her the one who deals with race relations in the reboot. And she goes back to law school, or she goes back to school, and her professor is a black woman, and they end up becoming friends, but like they make her like the bumbling, a little bit out of
like
touch
white liberal
white lady who has really good intentions but just keeps sticking her foot in her mouth, that kind of thing. And it's like, would that be Miranda actually in her 50s, or are you just making that be Miranda? Like, I think it's an interesting question, because we have seen like that generation, it's like roughly baby boomer / Gen X people age to a point where now they are, it's kind of like there's two paths. Like, it's like, which path are they going to go now?
Like, there is kind of a middle of the road path.
Yeah.
I think it's like, for someone who takes the Miranda path, it's like, how willing are you to be wrong and actually learn? Mm-hmm. That is the big differentiating factor.
Yeah, and that's what they are pretty much successfully writing with Miranda, I would say, in the reboot. But it definitely made a lot of people mad, because they're like, that wouldn't be Miranda. Like, Miranda would be with it. Miranda would be this. Miranda would be this. And it's like, I don't know if she would, actually.
Because she wasn't even really... She's been in that bubble for so long. Like, the bubble of the Sex and the City world. Like, why would she know?
Yeah. They are expecting a lot more of her than she maybe actually was in the original show. Like,
yes,
if you're like
agreed.
Baseline not racist in the 90s, like, that's not amazing at all.
Right.
So,
that's not necessarily dazzling. The whole thesis of this episode is really strange. It's basically like Carrie, I mean, it's not strange. I think it does make some good points, which is like, Carrie's like, why do you need to be married or having kids to receive like a big fun party with like financial rewards from your family and friends? And so she registers for a wedding for herself.
Well, after a parade of events, though, she didn't just
You explain.
Yeah. So first of all, I want to say that both myself and my mom, we have talked about this phenomenon quite a bit of like, why it is fucked up that you don't get to be supported. There's not gifts for you, basically.
A material way.
Yeah. Like, there's not going to be big parties or any of that if you don't have the major typical life milestones. If you don't get married, if you don't have a kid, you're typically not going to be able to be like, okay, everybody, I have a registry. Like, there's definitely not a registry situation. So anyway, Carrie and Stanford go to their friend's apartment. They're having their third baby. They've both bought these expensive gifts off the registry. They show up. Carrie's wearing her Manolo Blahniks as per usual. And the parents are like, you have to take your shoes off because the kids pick stuff up off of the floor. So she's like, okay, I'll leave my shoes here. At the end of the night, her shoes are gone, and they never figure out what happened with them. Somebody took them, I guess. The woman asks her, how much were the shoes? I'll pay for them because I'm sorry that this happened. Carrie's like, they were $485, and she's like, never mind, because you are clearly shallow, and like, I have bigger fish to fry now because I have these kids, and the fact that you would spend that much money on shoes is crazy, and I should not be expected to pay for them. And Carrie's like, okay, yes, but also I'm valid for my purchases, basically. Yeah. So she decides to get back at the friend by registering to marry herself at Manolo Blahnik. She tells her friend that that's where she's registered, and then the friend goes, and the only item on the list is those shoes. It's a very needlessly bitchy event, though.
I mean, I kind of love it.
Yeah.
Like, it is needlessly bitchy, but also the friend makes it that way.
The friend is mean. The friend, if somebody said that stuff to me, I'd be like, fuck off. Like, what's your problem?
Yeah.
Like, she's like too hateful. There's so many other things you could say to not pay $485. She could have so easily been like, oh, that's so steep for me right now. I'm sorry that this happened. Here's $200. Okay.
Yeah, right. Also, it's like, okay, you're living in this giant townhouse you probably own and you can't afford that. Like, for sure. Yeah, like, that is silly.
It was silly, too, because Carrie's like, you used to wear them. So it's not even that this friend never had expensive shoes. It's that she just doesn't get them anymore because she's changed. Like...
Yeah.
It'd be crazy to ask someone who's never bought a designer item to pay for that, but it's not crazy to ask her to.
I also just want to say that I think we haven't even talked about the fact that the dialogue is really well written in this show most of the time. It's really funny. And there's a line in the very beginning of this show, or this episode, that made me laugh both times I watched the episode, which is, I made my little sister listen to Free to Be You and Me so many times I almost turned her into a gay man. But the way he says it is like, I almost turned her into a gay man. And that makes me laugh every time I hear it. I love Stanford. I can't believe he's dead. It's so fucked up.
He deserves better in the show. It is kind of surprising to me that they didn't they do give him storylines, but they don't give him anything too heartfelt, kind of like what we're going to talk about Girls next week. At some point in season 6, they do give Elijah a real romantic storyline and like attention in that way, and they never did that on this show.
I cannot wait to talk about Girls and to also do like a conversation about what makes them similar, because it is an interesting conversation for sure.
Another kind of side plot of that episode is debating whether or not children like have a place in public. Like, what Samantha's just mad that there's a child in a restaurant. Miranda's saying she doesn't like any children but her own. Like, there's just lots of talk of like kids should not be seen or heard, literally. And it's a very American, like a distinctly American view. I've like heard a lot of things. I mean, there are other countries I'm sure who feel the same, but you would think that in America that wouldn't be like the case necessarily, but it totally is, and amongst all different types of people, where like they say they don't like kids, they don't want to have to deal with kids, they make them uncomfortable, like all that kind of thing. And then what's crazy about that is that they're kind of like dehumanizing children as people. Like they're like not people to them. They're only annoying and they're disturbances. But it reminds me of a lot of talk that I've heard recently about how in like some countries in Europe and just generally probably like Scandinavia, like the countries where you can leave your baby out in the stroller and no one will abduct them, where it's like children are integrated into adult life, like they can be out with adults at night and that's normal. And that kind of thinking is what like isolates parents so much, I feel like. Where they feel like they can't just go out with their friends. They feel like they have to have all these babysitters or whatever just to be able to like be sane themselves.
And a lot of people have kids because they think they're supposed to, not because they actually like kids and want to have a kid. Like, I saw this statement somewhere recently and I really feel like it's true. If you actively hate kids and if you actively hate kids, you have some unhealed trauma. Or also, if kids don't like you, you're probably being a fake bitch.
Yeah.
Like, because kids can tell when you're being fake. Like, it doesn't work, Or if you don't have like, if you have a huge ego, or if you take yourself too seriously, like that doesn't work with a kid unless you're trying to scare them, in which case it might work. But I have a former employer who would literally get mad if there were kids on the plane with him, and then he would complain about it to me, and I would be like, actually, I wouldn't even commiserate with him. I'd be like, you're the problem, and I would get away with it because he was the problem.
Yeah. It just, that clash is so real of like people in, I feel like that sort of attitude is really present in big cities too. Because there's a lot of single people as it is. So like there's a lot of people with big egos. There's a lot of single people. There's a lot of people who actively resent a traditional lifestyle.
Yeah.
So yeah, it checks out, but it's just kind of like, damn, like you guys hate children.
Okay, time for the series finale, season 6, episode 20, An American Girl in Paris, part 2. It aired on February 22nd, 2004, and there's a lot here. Carrie has lunch with Petrovsky, who's her then boyfriend, he's Russian, with Petrovsky's ex, Juliette B., who tells her he always gives priority to his art above his partner. She finds that true and generally has a bad time. Charlotte prepares with Anthony to receive her promised adoption baby's birth parents, but they change their mind. Ultimately, she and Harry get another baby girl from China. Steve's mother, Mary, suffers memory loss after a mild stroke, and Miranda offers to take her in, which their maid Magda calls love. Samantha finally admits that Smith means enough to her, unlike any man, for her to be jealous. Mr. Big has finally realized that he cannot be happy without Carrie and sets out to bring her back to New York, just when she was considering breaking up with the Russian anyhow.
How convenient.
How convenient that he shows up in Paris exactly while she's there at the right hotel. And I'm actually really surprised we've made it this far without really talking about Big that much.
We haven't talked about him at all.
Shout out to us. No, we really haven't talked about him much at all. I have to say that I actually really enjoy the parts where they are just being friends. Like, I think their friendship chemistry is really, like, wholesome to observe. To me, the most satisfying, or at least thought-provoking conclusion in this episode is Miranda's.
Yeah.
Because she is like, okay, Steve, your mother can live with us. And then Magda is like, this is love. But it's also like, it is love, but it's also sacrifice. It's like a really big sacrifice. And are those the same thing? I don't know.
I mean, it's an expression of love, because why do you do it? You wouldn't do it if you didn't love that person. Like, she didn't love Steve enough. She wouldn't make that sacrifice. So it is an expression of love, but is it, it's just like kind of simplifying it to say that's love. It is, but it is a lot more than that too.
Yes. I also want to say that I really love that Charlotte and Harry end up together. I think that it is a little bit, I mean, it's just classic Sex in the City that she's like, I want to marry a waspy man and have a perfect white baby, and then ends up marrying like a rich Jewish man and adopts a child, and it's like, well, things aren't so pretty, but they're home. Like,
that's her takeaway.
Like, it's different. Yeah. That is just very Sex in the City as a takeaway.
Yeah, I have watched, we haven't even mentioned this, but there is an insane amount of Sex and the City analyzing video essays on YouTube. Like, an insane amount, and I probably have seen all of them because they'll just autoplay. Like, if I'm, like, doing something. Yeah. Like, I just autoplay.
I've seen a couple.
I've heard, like, every take on each character's arc. Charlotte's is probably the easiest.
No, she's really consistent.
I feel like Samantha's is the most surprising. I mean, by the end of it, it's like they're all doing the thing that you thought they wouldn't do. Even Carrie to a point, right? Because even though it was fan service in a lot of ways for her to end up with Big, like in a lot of ways, her whole thing is kind of self-sabotaging, running away, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So for her, but here's the thing, she doesn't make that final choice. He does. Like, if she could have been chosen on day one by him, she would have been. It wasn't like a full Chuck Bass, Blair Waldorf where like they're constantly rejecting each other for different reasons when they come to each other and say, I'm ready, it's time. This is very much Carrie wanted that the entire time, would have dropped any man at any moment for that to happen.
Yeah. I also want to say that I know a lot of people are like, Aiden was the one, she should have been with Aiden. But here's my thing. If Aiden was ugly, no one would say that. Because his personality doesn't really exist. And when I say ugly, I mean like TV ugly. Like not actual ugly. You know, like he's fine. He likes her. He doesn't do anything particularly spectacular, in my opinion.
It was more like he's nice to her. He's not like putting her on this roller coaster, and that people just wanted that kind of like safety for her, but she was never gonna want that.
I think the whole Petrovsky thing,
who the fuck is that guy? I don't like him. I
know. Well, it's so funny because in the scene where she meets him, I was like fully expecting him to be like a creep that she like didn't want to be around.
He looks like a creep.
And then they just like have a full-blown relationship, and you just have to accept it.
They're like,
I guess,
not compatible at all in the least. Like, I don't get that.
No. The way that like men not liking their girlfriend's friends is like normalized on this show. You know what I mean? Like when Petrovsky meets all of her friends and she's just like, yeah, well, like you're basically, she's never like, fuck you, you don't like my friends. She's like, oh, I don't know. You never meet the guy's friends. Like I wish there was an episode where she gets to meet Big's friends and they suck, you know?
Yeah.
But Big doesn't have friends.
I feel like the best example of them kind of being a friend group is Steve and Aiden being friends.
Yes. Yeah,
so I like that.
They're cute.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
It is kind of interesting. I know it was a deliberate choice, but it is kind of interesting that we literally never hear ever about Carrie's family or parents.
Wait, isn't there? No, there's one line where she's like, my dad left and it was just me and my mom, but, like, and that's why I don't trust men.
Yeah, but like it's so nothing. Like it's like this woman has zero obligations in her life.
Yeah.
And she did,
even the having to write the column is loose, clearly.
Yeah, I mean, she's not... The financial implications of this show have always been a major topic. Huge topic. Because people are always like, how does she must have a trust fund or something, because how are you writing a dinky newspaper column and buying $400 shoes every week? There's something suspect going on.
It's a fantasy.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. It's also a fantasy in the way that sex is like empowerment in this show, which we're going to talk about that when we get to Girls, because it is the exact opposite.
Yeah, Girls,
in that show.
Girls
and I think
is the antidote. It's almost like the complete opposite in a lot of ways.
It's humiliation. Sex is humiliation in Girls. And that's what made it so revolutionary. But we're going to talk about that when we get there. And that being said, like a show where women are speaking this candidly about sex with each other that was also really revolutionary. And that was Sex and the City.
And it is a good thing to see, for sure. It's just not the only thing. Like there's nuance to everything, and they don't for the time. I mean, they do talk about pretty much every like kind of like dysfunction, kind of a dysfunctional dynamic you could have in sex, but like without, kind of in a very simple way, or in a very physical way. Like literally like erectile dysfunction type of thing, you know, like a very easy to solve kind of
tangible way.
Yeah, not anything too like 4D chess. It's very like, this is a problem.
Yeah.
We're fixing it or we're not.
Yeah, or the 4D chess is all saved for the interpersonal weird relationship stuff.
Yeah.
Instead of the sex.
So, do you feel like ultimately this show is about the friendship?
I think based off the fact that we just spent all this time not talking about the romantic relationships basically at all, does prove that it is about the friendship. I think it's about the friendship.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Even though I think like one thing that's weird though is that the friendship for the most part is like very much taken for granted in the show. Like they don't really have to put that much work into being friends, which is definitely not the way it actually is.
Well,
And
you got to cut them some slack because they are hanging out in the 90s. They had to like make sure that they it's actually amazing how much they were able to meet up in person compared to now.
But the thing that keeps the show going is the relationships between the women and the things that happen to each of them. And the men are kind of it's like how everyone likes to quote, there's that episode where Charlotte's like, maybe we can be each other's soulmates, like that part.
Don't laugh at me, but maybe we could be each other's soulmates. And then we could let men be just these great, nice guys to have fun with.
Well, that sounds like a plan.
I'm 35. 35 is not 25.
Thank God.
35.
Oh, shut the fuck up. I'm 140.
I do think that is mostly accurate to the show's core message.
Yeah, the problem, or like I guess kind of like the conflict that keeps you watching is that they want that to be the truth so bad, but they can't shut off the part of themselves that wants tradition, that wants, you know, not Samantha.
Yeah.
By the end, even Samantha technically has kind of let her walls down, and she's like in a real she's like in a monogamous relationship. It's that thing that is at odds in all of them. It's like, well, we love each other and we support each other in all the ways that matter as friends. Like we have a support system, but we also want it all, if you will.
Yes.
We want the white picket
women
fence.
have it all.
Yeah.
We're thinking about that kind of what comes out in the end is like every woman deep down wants a storybook, picturesque family, monogamy, husband relationship.
Yeah.
You know?
I think what's also what they're dealing with so much in this show, because they're all in their 30s and like 40s by the end, is that you're kind of sold the idea that it will be easy or that it will happen to you, kind of somewhere in that. So Charlotte's the one who's constantly bringing that up, but they all have that in their brain to some degree. And so it's them in their 30s thinking that their time has come and gone and that they were kind of sold a lie because that did not happen. Like they thought it would happen.
Yeah. And we will pick up on this discourse when we get to girls. So did the show leave an impact on its genre? Absolutely. I don't think that's even up for debate. And is it worth revisiting? As someone who just watched it all for the first time, I would definitely say yes.
I think a part of me thought you would think it was like dumb and not worth watching. I don't know why, but
I think that it's not silly, but it would be antithetical to my personhood as someone hosting Sleepover Cinema to dismiss it, because all of this stuff matters. It all makes an impact at the end of the day. And I mean, who am I to be the arbiter of taste? Like, I'm not that girl. In the wise words of Elphaba, I'm not that girl. Okay, so much of this subject matter will come back next week when we talk about HBO's Girls. If you're someone who really hates Lena Dunham, you're just going to have to buckle up and get through it or skip it altogether. I don't really know how we're going to approach her, discussing her as a person, but I look forward to it because it will be a good challenge. And until then,
You can find more from us at evergreenpodcast.com/sleepover-cinema and keep up with our latest creative projects at tupingproductions.com. We're on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at Sleepover Cinema and post a full video version of each episode on YouTube every Thursday. You can follow me, Audrey, at Audriana Leach on everything.
and you can follow me at Hannah Ray Leach on everything. And you can join our Discord server at the link in the episode description or on evergreenpodcasts.com.
You can check out our merch at twopinkproductions.com/shop.
And if you like the show, if you're a Carrie and you want to send this episode to your Miranda, please do. And leave us a review on Apple Podcasts if you have not done so yet.
Sleepover Cinema is a production of Evergreen Podcasts, produced, edited, and engineered by us, Hannah and Audrey Leach. Sleepover Cinema is mixed by Sean Roll Hoffman with theme music by Josh Perlman Hall. Executive producer is Michael D'Aloia.
We'll be back next week for more problematic white women content.
Woo!
Yay!